My name is Hannah, and this is my beauty budget. You guys, I'm shopping my stash again, and I couldn't be more excited. It's one of my favorite things that I did during my no-buy year. It's one of the things that helped the most with my no-buy year. I would say it deepened my no-buy in a way, and it also helped alleviate some of the struggles that I had during my no-buy year. So I'm excited to see what kind of impact shopping my stash will have on my beauty budget. I know it's kind of an intense situation going on up here. I just dyed my eyebrows last night, so they are absolutely at their darkest and sharpest. It's not always like this, and they will lighten up over the next couple of days. I always kind of like it and kind of feel like a little bit too something during the first couple of days after I dye them, but it's worth it because the darker I dye them, the longer it lasts. There's also this going on, which is obviously from Rent the Runway, one of the most ridiculous, but can I even say that? I feel like everything I've rented has been ridiculous in its own way. I think that this is something that I thought might be just over the edge of being too ridiculous for me to feel great in it, but I actually feel great in it, like better in it than in many of the other things that I rented. All the details will be down below. I can't buy this. Everything I rent from Rent the Runway, you guys are like, you should buy it, you should buy it. I can't. Everything I'm renting is worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I'm renting all designer pieces, really nice pieces. I only have $200 a month to spend on all 4 categories: makeup, skincare, clothing, and homewares, and that includes necessities. So it's just not in the cards for me to buy any of the pieces that I'm renting from Rent the Runway, but it is really fun to be able to have them and wear them for a little while, and this has really been one of the stars of the journey. Let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. So as I always do with Shop My Stash, I'm going to first review the things for which I shopped my stash last time, which I think might have been October, but I still remember what they are, and I still remember how I felt about using them. And then I'm going to let you know what I shopped my stash for today. So the eyeshadow palette, I usually pick an eyeshadow palette, maybe not every time, but usually. The eyeshadow palette I shopped my stash for last time was this Urban Decay Moondust palette. And I actually filmed a 5 days of Moondust video, and that video is a very comprehensive review of my experience with this palette, and it's also a very thorough demonstration of what this palette can do for me. So I'm actually not going to talk that much about this because I just suggest that you go watch that video if you have an abiding interest in this palette and if you're curious what kind of looks I came up with using this palette. I think I used all of the eyeshadows during those 5 days, and I filmed all 5 looks. I didn't film myself applying the looks, but I showed the looks up close and I talked about how I had achieved each look. I remember that the thing that surprised and delighted me the most was how well these shadows wore. They didn't get crusty, they didn't cake off, they didn't crease up. In spite of being basically glitter suspended in an eyeshadow base, they were really hardy, and they ended up looking really good on the eyes even at the end of the day. So that was very impressive. I still love this palette. I have good memories attached to it, both old and recent. And since I tapered off of using the things for which I shopped my stash in October, I've just forgotten about this. I haven't reached for it, I haven't used it. I have so many other really beautiful glittery shiny things right now. So shopping my stash for this did one good thing for this palette, which is that it got me to use it a lot during those couple of weeks in October. And so I feel like I got use out of it when it was spotlighted for Shop My Stash. But there's a secondary purpose that I think I use Shop My Stash for. My hope is that when I shop my stash for something and then use it a bunch, I'll be reminded of how much I like it and what I like about it, and that will cause me to then reach for that thing more frequently in the months that follow, even when I've shopped my stash for other things. And that didn't really happen with this. I got distracted by other things. I received the Star palette as a gift, and I started using that, and I just stopped using this. So hopefully this video and remembering that I did shop my stash for this will help kind of boost that secondary purpose. And I'm going to put this at the front of my eyeshadow storage bin and try to remember what it can do, because I have been really into topping my looks with glitter lately, and that's essentially what this is amazing for. I also shopped my stash for this last time. This is a Lorac powder cheek stain in Plum Passion, and it's so old at this point. I did enjoy it. I was reminded of what's nice about it, and what's nice about it is that it's got this beautiful kind of wintry, plummy flush to it, but it also has a sheen. So when I buff this out onto my cheeks, I don't even want to call it a highlighting blush, because I feel like it kind of preceded the highlighter craze. It's just a glowy blush, but in a dark color. So there's something really special about that and really unusual. And I don't think I have another blush that does that, that is that. So I've come close to wanting to declutter this a couple of times, and every time I've been like, no, it's kind of unique to my collection and blah, 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 blah. I shopped my stash for it. I was reminded of what makes it nice. And then ever since then, it's just been languishing because it really is quite old and nasty. I don't think it's diseased. I don't think that it's endangering my health to use it. I think that it's just feeling a little crusty and icky and might not quite be performing in the way that it used to. I think that the fact that I shopped my stash for it, used it a couple of times, and then have never reached for it since then means that this is probably on the chopping block for my blush declutter. This, however, is a really lovely product that was also kind of almost on the chopping block in terms of highlighters. It's the Clinique Chubby Stick Sculpting Highlight. I kept not using it, not reaching for it, and I was kind of considering not keeping it, and that was why I put it in my Shop My Stash. I wanted to get to know it better. And it was when I filmed 5 Days of Moondust that I became aware of how incredibly wet look this highlight is. It might be my most wet look highlighter, which is really strange because it doesn't feel wet. It feels dry, kind of. And I always thought that it had sort of an icy pink aspect, because that's kind of what it looks like in the stick, and I just wasn't attracted to it as a product before I wore it a number of times and kind of checked myself out in the mirror for a couple of days. But when I did that, wearing this both in the video and on some other days when I wasn't filming, I couldn't believe how wet it looks. It just melts into my skin and it makes my cheeks look like they're wet with Vaseline or something, but they're not. It dries down, which I really appreciate. So a wet look highlight that doesn't stay tacky, that's kind of like a unicorn for me. That's something I feel like I was searching for a long time, or wanted to search for, but I was on a no buy, so I couldn't. And it turns out that I had it in my collection already all along. So this is a great product. Again, I would like to remember to reach for it more often, and I think that talking about it in this video will help me remember to do that. I'm gonna put it on my décolletage. So the last thing for which I shopped my stash last time, I no longer own. It was the Glossier lip gloss, just the clear lip gloss. And I had had it for quite a long time. I actually bought it when it was first released by Glossier. They released it in a holiday kit, and you had to buy the whole kit. Two things. One, when I started using it, because I had shopped my stash for it, I didn't like it at all. I just felt like it was this kind of petroleum goop. It just really didn't sit well with me. It didn't feel nourishing or lovely. It felt like this very external thing that I was putting on top of my lips that would just sit there. It just felt very chemical to me for some reason. I didn't like that. And then also, I had used up most of it because I've had it for so long. And so I didn't feel too horrible about getting rid of it. I just got to a point where I was like, ew, I don't want this anymore. And I knew I wasn't going to wear it anymore. So I got rid of that in my little pre-holiday declutter, which I'll link in the cards. So it was just those 4 things in my Shop My Stash last time. And I feel like it was a rip-roaring success as far as shopping my stash goes. 2 of the things, the Moondust eyeshadow palette and the Clinique Chubby Stick highlighter, I realized are great, and I want to use them more, and I feel motivated now to use them more. And then the other 2 things, the lip gloss and the blush, I came to realize that I think I probably don't want them anymore. And it was because I shopped my stash for them that I discovered that. If I had just left them and not paid attention to them and kind of left them in the backs of my drawers and ignored my feelings about them, they would still be there languishing, and I wouldn't have any clarity. And even if I decided to do a declutter, I I might come across each of those things and say, well, I actually don't know because I haven't used this in a long time. I'm going to keep it and find out how I feel. So I'm glad that I dedicated myself to using them so that I was able to find out that I was ready to let them go. All right, let me tell you what I shopped my stash for today. I picked an eyeshadow palette. I feel a little bit not nervous. I don't think nervous is the right word. I'm worried that it might not be good judgment on my part, but I'm going for it anyway. I shopped my stash for the Urban Decay Electric palette. This is a really intense pressed pigment palette. I actually reached for this the last time I filmed. I was wearing those purple tortoiseshell earrings. I was filming the video How My No Buy Year Changed My Closet, and I had on a pretty neutral eye look, and I wanted to put some purple into my eye look to kind of tie my eyes and my earrings together. And so I reached into this palette and I dipped into, I think it must have been Jilted, this kind of orchid purple. The softest eyeshadow brush, the tiniest bit, and I just started brushing it softly in the kind of upper crease area, and it was like whoosh, really purple, really intense, really pigmented. It was exciting and it made me excited about working with this palette. I have some colorful looks in my near future. I might be showing up looking more colorful and looking a little bit more out of the box than I usually do. That just has to be the case if I shop my stash for this, if I dedicate myself to reaching for this most days in the coming weeks. You can't not do a colorful look with this, right? I mean, it's just like, that's what this is about. And it's just not my go-to. I don't usually do colorful looks. I will sometimes do them when I'm coming on camera and I'm feeling kind of spicy. I'll reach for something like this or some of my other colors and I'll do a look, but for daytime, almost never. And you'll know this if you watched my video about the Urban Decay Moondust palette, because it took me so many days to get to using that green. We will see how it goes. It is kind of a grand experiment and I think it's going to be fun. I think the thing that makes me nervous is that I'm still in my Rent the Runway phase. If you didn't see my first or second video of the year, the video in which I talked about it, my dad and my mom got me a month of Rent the Runway Unlimited as a Christmas gift. So that's why I'm using Rent the Runway this month, is because I have this free month. I'm not going to keep up my subscription next month. It's just for the month of January. So for the month of January, I've been wearing all of these really dramatic and beautiful pieces of clothing. And I think that I'm a little bit worried about the fact that my final weeks of Rent the Runway will overlap with the first couple of weeks of having shopped my stash for this, because I feel like I can get away with, for example, a sweater like this if I'm keeping it pretty neutral on my face, especially for day. And I tend to feel like if I'm gonna wear a fluorescent yellow-green eyeshadow, I want to keep it pretty neutral in terms of what I'm wearing on my body. I tend to go big in one area and then to kind of go chic and neutral everywhere else. So I might break out of that for a couple of days because I'm not going to rent boring stuff from Rent the Runway. I only have 1 or 2 weeks left and I'm definitely going to be using this palette. So I might be doing both at the same time, and that'll be strange and also fun for me, and maybe for you. I also shopped my stash for this NARS cheek palette, and I think that I shopped my stash for this already. I think I did it in early 2018, but that's okay because I don't have a gigantic and endless makeup collection. I think it's normal that I would cycle things through shopping my stash, and I haven't used this consistently in a while. And so why not shop my stash for it again? I also feel like these blushes here are a little bit more wintry and it's still technically sort of winter time. I remember when I shopped my stash for before, this highlighter was very gold on me and I only used it once. At this point, I feel like I might have the perspective or the skill to possibly try to make that work with that again. And the same is true of this bronzy blush down here. I feel like this highlighter and this blush, I didn't play well with them last time. I was kind of like, no, they don't work for me. Only these ones work. But at this point, I'd like to give them another chance. So I'm shopping my stash for this beautiful palette. It's the NARS Unfiltered 1 Cheek Palette. And then I picked 2 lippies. This is the Bite Beauty Amuse Bouche lipstick in Chai. It was a Sephora birthday gift, possibly last year, maybe the year before. And it's a very beautiful color. It's actually one of my favorite lipstick colors, and I don't want this to go bad. It's such a lovely formula. I just feel like I want to bring it to the front of my collection and start using it as one of my go-to everyday lips, one of the things that I default to reaching for. For some reason, it's not that. Because of the color and the formula, it should be that for me. This should be one of my default lipsticks, but it's not. And I think by shopping my stash for it, I will elevate it to its rightful place in my makeup stash. And then lastly, I shopped my stash for this bright red liquid lipstick. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills liquid lipstick in the color American Doll. This made it through my lipstick declutter because I felt like I wanted to have a cherry red liquid lipstick. A classic red lip is something that I frequently want. And if I ever get myself into a situation where I need one that's extremely long wearing, that I don't want to have to worry about reapplying, a red liquid lip is what I would need for that. So I was like, I'm loath to declutter it because what if I need it? That was kind of how I was like, I never wear it, but what if I need it? I don't want to keep keeping it on those grounds. I want to find out if it's something that I actually enjoy wearing, because I'm afraid to say that even though I've had it for a little while, well over a year, obviously, since before my no-buy year, even though I've had it for probably almost 2 years, I don't know if I like it or not. But I kept it. I kept it through my lipstick declutter on false pretenses. I kept it maybe for reasons that I shouldn't have. So I need to find out once and for all about this, and the way to do that is to wear it. I'm also a little bit thrilled and horrified about the idea of shopping my stash for this bright eyeshadow palette and a bright cherry red lipstick at the same time, and all of that happening during the time when I'm going to be renting dramatic editorial pieces and wearing them both on and off camera. The possibilities are just a little bit daunting and also tantalizing, and I might get myself in over my head, but you know, it's not that serious. It'll be fun to see how all of this unfolds. So that is it. Those are the things for which I shopped my stash, these 2 palettes and these 2 lippies. I think it'll be a fun couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to reporting back about those products. Well, first I'm looking forward to showing up on camera in a bunch of highly colorful eye looks. I think it will be jolly. If you are doing a no-buy year, I recommend shopping your stash. And I don't know if you guys notice this, but I actually try not to recommend things very often. I do it from time to time. I try to focus on talking about my own experience, and I trust that you guys are smart enough to take from my own experience whatever will be useful to you. So I do slip into that language sometimes. I think it's hard not to, just because of the premise of YouTube, but I try not to. I try to stick to just sharing my own experience. But I actually do recommend, if you're doing a no-buy year, I do recommend shopping your stash. You might not do it exactly how I do it. This might not be the way for you. You might not want to just pick 4 things at once. There are other manifestations of it. You can have everyday makeup drawer. You can put things in your makeup bag for a while. You can do 1 palette a week. You know, there are all of these ways of focusing on using what you have, making a project essentially out of using what you have. I recommend it highly simply because it was so enlightening and so joyful when I was on a strict no-buy. I got so much joy out of literally going shopping. Like, I felt like I was going shopping in my stash. And every time it was time to put back the old things and pick out the new things, I felt the thrill of acquisition, but it wasn't tainted by that dark, sticky experience of overspending. And that was part of what changed my life. It was part of what I did on the no-buy that changed my life. And I still feel that. I still feel super excited about shopping in my own collection, even though I'm technically allowed to buy things right now. I'm still under relatively strict rules, so it's still a serious thrill. But I think having been on an actual no-buy and shopping my stash on my no-buy, it was an experience that I don't hesitate to recommend to you. So that is actually it. That is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that you will remember to take extra good care of yourself this week so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.